The PlayStation, the very first console in the line of the PlayStation brand and home to many classic games. But when it comes to these two Mario Sonic style rivals, they have no bigger legacy compared to the other PlayStation names, Spyro the Purple Dragon, and Crash the Orange Bandicoot. Now, since there is only one version of Crash that has a lot of info on him, we will only be using Classic Crash. And since Legend Spyro is too powerful, and Skylander Spyro is a little too recent, we'll also use Classic Spyro to make the fight a lot more fair. I'm one fish mob, and it's my job to see who would win in a fight. The Dragon Realms, a place of many different worlds, species, monsters, magic, and everything you can think of. The Dragon Realms are typically peaceful places, but whenever evil does stir its nasty head up, it will always be met by the realm's champion, Spyro. At first glance, Spyro looks like he's anything but a real threat. However, tick him off or get him motivated to do what's right, Spyro will be anything but friendly. As a video game superhero, Spyro has many abilities to help him on his way. He can continuously run through entire areas without tiring, is fast enough to catch up to even the fastest of enemies, and is strong enough to casually kill enemies of all kinds of sizes and break metal containers in only a matter of seconds. And though he can't fly, Spyro can glide using his wings to soar across gaps that are considered unreachable by jumping, though his distance usually depends on how high up he is. And when flying isn't enough, Spyro can climb up certain types of walls simply by jumping on them. To add to his versatility, Spyro can fight with many different attacks. One of Spyro's main attacks consists of charging his opponents with his horns. By doing this, he can use his horns to defeat enemies or disarm foes who are wielding metal shields or armor that are invulnerable to fire. If he needs to break something, he can dive straight towards the ground, horns first, for devastating results, or to break certain rocks in special containers. If he needs to protect himself from projectiles, he can use his wings to form a basic shield that repels certain enemy projectiles, but it doesn't work against direct physical attacks. This may be dandy and all, but Spyro's true bread and butter is his vast array of breaths. As a dragon, his main elemental attack is his fire breath, which he uses to turn all of his enemies into smoldering ash. But through his journeys, Spyro has gained several other breath types with varying functions and usefulness, like the bubble breath, a breath that spits out bubbles used for catching small insects like dragonflies at the cost of any kind of damage towards enemies or most chests and baskets. The electricity breath allows Spyro to power up machines and can also be used to defeat certain types of robots and is slightly more powerful than the fire breath. But the electricity breath takes a lot longer to kill enemies. The ice breath may only be able to freeze enemies and not damage them, but it comes with several benefits. When it freezes enemies, it makes them vulnerable for a few seconds, giving Spyro more than enough time to finish them off. Turns steam into icicles that he can use to swing on when platforming, and makes killing armored enemies or enemies that require electricity breath much faster. And finally, he has his water breath, which is useful in solving puzzles, activating water wheels, and slowing down enemies. Though the only flaw with this breath is that the only enemies it can kill is fodder and fire-based enemies. But Spyro rarely travels alone. He's usually alongside his best friend, Sparks the Dragonfly. Sparks helps Spyro by acting as his health meter, changing colors every time Spyro takes a hit to help represent how much more damage he can take until he'll die. But Sparks doesn't just stand around all day. He can also fire tiny energy balls at enemies like a Gatling gun, and his own abilities can be upgraded. And to top all this off, in the game Shadow Legacy, Yes, that's considered a part of the original series. Spyro was taught the ancient martial art of Dragon Kata. With this new training, Spyro's fighting skills became a lot more dangerous and a lot more refined. He can stab foes with Horn Jab, toss enemies around with Horn Toss, and if he needs to damage multiple enemies, can use Horn Slide. Spyro can also use its tail for devastating physical attacks such as Tail Hammer, where Spyro performs a vertical downward spinning motion, striking enemies from above. He can knock all surrounding enemies down with Tail Swipe, quickly jab enemies with Tail Stab, and if he feels like it, can perform Tail Thunder, a powerful vertical upward spinning motion that strikes enemies from below with his tail. But that's not everything he gained while learning Dragon Kata. He also learned how to manipulate ki into his attacks. Spyro can channel his chi energy towards his wings to swipe at enemies in front of him, releasing the energy and creating a very powerful attack. With Chi Punch, Spyro can concentrate his Chi energy into a small, long-range energy ball to attack foes from a distance. And then he's finally got his Chi Roar, where Spyro channels his Chi energy into a mighty dragon roar that creates a powerful shockwave that affects all enemies in its radius. Despite being a young dragon, Spyro has proven that size doesn't matter. He's saved dragons from extinction, freed 100 frozen fairies, found all the lost fireflies and dragonflies, rescued 150 dragon eggs with a little help, and has defeated much larger and more powerful enemies, like Nasty Nork, who defeated every other dragon, and Red, a powerful and evil dragon elder. However, just because he's powerful doesn't mean he's perfect. Spyro shows very little concern for self-safety and is hardly cautious. Spyro can get cocky at times and is very arrogant, and if he's without sparks, he's usually killed in one hit. However, if you dare mess with this dragon, you'll get burned. Dr. Neocortex, a true mental aberration. He can build all kinds of machinery and robots, has a big scary lab in the middle of nowhere, and is easily one of the smartest minds in his world. However, this wasn't all that Cortex wanted, for he wanted to use his intellect to, you guessed it, take over the world. To do this, Cortex needed followers, so he started gathering all the local animals on the islands and began rapidly evolving them into physically superior versions of their own kind. However, one of these experiments would ultimately lead to his own undoing over and over again, and this creature's name was Crash Bandicoot. At first glance, Crash looks like he's anything but a fighter, but if he's motivated or he has to get something done, he will most certainly become anyone's greatest fear. However, he can't be a threat to Cortex or his enemies unprotected or defenseless. Crash Bandicoot is strong enough to cause considerable damage to Titans and other large creatures and go toe-to-toe with the likes of Crunch Bandicoot. He is also very agile, able to jump more than his own body height into the air with a standard jump. He's able to run and fight steadily for long periods of time and can take massive blows from enemies and get back up and resume fighting with the same vigor and liveliness as before. Crash can also run quite fast, using his speed as an advantage against larger foes. It's not just his speed that's increased. Crash's reflexes and reaction speeds are enhanced, allowing him to dodge enemy attacks and projectiles, and if he does get hit, it doesn't matter since he's able to take large amounts of damage and continue fighting. Other than that, Crash is quite limber, being able to twist and crouch his body into all sorts of positions. Crash is also a superb climber, able to hang from ledges and traverse them with great speed, and can scale sheer surfaces with only minor handholds. Crash is also no novice when it comes to fighting, possessing considerable skill in hand-to-hand combat and an ability to use weapons such as his fruit bazooka and operating any sort of vehicle with ease. However, his main strategy is a very simple one. Go around punching and kicking things. This can go from punches and kicks to performing basic combos to some of his more powerful attacks, like the trademarked Cyclone Spin, where Crash spins himself at high speeds to deal powerful blows to opponents, and allows them to float slowly to the ground or deflect projectiles. And to boost this, Crash's stamina allows him to keep on spinning for almost a solid minute before he gets dizzy. Even then, it's only for a brief moment. But if he comes across something too hard for him to break, like let's say a steel crate, he can jump into the air and belly flop straight down to the ground, crushing anything beneath him. And add to that, Crash has shown to be immune to mind control, as machines like the Cortex Vortex fail to do anything to Crash. However, due to the amount of adventures Crash goes on, he needs some help sometimes. And this is where Aku Aku comes in. Aku Aku, Crash's mentor, provides magical services to Crash, most notably his invincibility power. After Crash finds and collects 3 Aku Aku masks, Crash can become invincible for a few moments in time. And during this phase, pretty much nothing can touch Crash. However, it can't prevent the deaths caused by falling. But Aku Aku just doesn't help Crash by granting him invincibility. He helps with one of Crash's more unique abilities, Titan Jacking. When Crash stuns a powerful monster known as a Titan, he can use Aku Aku to take over the mind of said Titan, essentially hijacking it for his own use. For this battle, we'll be going with 3 Titan types. The Battler is a giant vampire bat-like mutant that can perform combo attacks, create cyclones, or create a shield with its wings. The E-Electric is an eel-like titan that can attack with powerful bolts of electricity that ranges from powerful thunderbolts to what could be considered a small thunderstorm. The E-Electric can also charge and electrocute enemies in front of it, or can aim at multiple targets more carefully and electrocute them from a distance. And finally, we have the Rat-Sickle, a tall, muscular, bipedal rat that is strong enough to insta-kill minions with light attacks, or heavily damage bosses with heavy attacks. The Rat-Sickle can also manipulate ice, either freezing enemies for a moment, destroying objects such as plants and crates, or creates blocks of ice that will freeze enemies that get in its path. Despite his outward appearance, Crash is anything but something to joke around with. He's defeated the evil Dr. Neocortex multiple times, defeated his own evil clone, and has defeated foes labeled as gods, tanked a point-blank explosion, and piloted a mech without training. Crash has also survived knocking into 2-meter wide meteors in such a minuscule time frame, all of the other meteors are completely frozen. And thanks to ProDude, we now know this would mean the speed Crash hit the meteors with is the equivalent of around Mach 33,000 and 160 megatons of TNT. And note, this is one of the few things in the games that Crash can hit and not be killed by no matter what. However, Crash isn't unstoppable. He lacks a lot of intelligence and, physically, isn't very strong. He is also extremely lazy and easily distracted, which has proven to be problematic every so often. However, if you choose to fight this Bandicoot, be prepared for an unimaginable beating.
Fight!
why did Spyro win? Well, Crash was certainly more durable and expert at combat. Crash's Titan jacking could be useful against Spyro, and Aku Aku's invincibility could have been Crash's trump card. However, Spyro in the end was a lot faster, had a more refined fighting style, and Spyro's varied arsenal of breaths can really aid him in this fight against Crash, with fire, electricity, and ice being the most useful. Not to mention, Sparks is a far more reliable partner than what Aku Aku is. I mean, let's look at both of them. Sparks is always with Spyro, able to hold his own in combat and help Spyro out when needed. While Aku Aku, aside from Titan jacking, doesn't really help Crash with his fights, or anything in the matter. Heck, even when he does help Crash by granting him invincibility, he never stays around that long and will only help Crash if he collects 3 specific items. And let's face it, it's unlikely those will be commonplace. And before you say the Titans could have easily killed Spyro, especially the ones you left out, 1. How would you know that? And 2. Spyro, time and time again, has fought plenty of giant monsters before, so the Titans wouldn't really be anything new to him. So in the end, it looks like Crash messed with this dragon and got burned. The winner is Spyro.